The forest was quiet, except for the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional chirp of crickets. Lila Parker tightened her jacket around her as she walked along the narrow trail. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth. She had come here to clear her head, something she often did when life felt overwhelming. College wasn't easy for someone like her, someone who preferred books over parties, equations over conversations, and solitude over crowded rooms. Tonight, though, it wasn't just stress that drove her out into the woods. It was curiosity. Lila had always been fascinated by the stars. Her dorm room was cluttered with astronomy magazines, star charts, and sketches of constellations she hoped to see one day through a better telescope than the old one she owned. Earlier that evening, while gazing up at the sky from her window, she noticed something unusual, a series of bright lights moving across the horizon. They weren't airplanes. They didn't blink or follow a straight path. Instead, they seemed to hover for a moment before disappearing behind the distant hills. Intrigued, Lila grabbed her flashlight, slipped on her hiking boots, and set off toward the ridge where the lights had vanished. As she reached the top of the hill, her breath caught in her throat. Below her, in a small clearing surrounded by tall trees, lay something enormous. At first glance it looked like a fallen tree trunk, but then it moved. Whatever it was alive. And big. Lila froze, gripping her flashlight tightly. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure whatever creature was down there could hear it. Slowly, she took a step back, ready to run if needed. But then she saw it more clearly. It wasn't a tree trunk. It was a dragon. Or at least it looked like one. Its body shimmered with iridescent scales that reflected the moonlight, shifting colors like oil on water. Its wings were folded against its sides, torn and battered as if it had been through some kind of battle. Long claws extended from its massive paws, each one sharp enough to cut steel. And yet, despite its intimidating appearance, the creature didn't seem threatening. It let out a low, pained growl, its glowing eyes scanning the area weakly. Lila hesitated. Every instinct told her to turn around and leave, but something about the way the creature looked, vulnerable, hurt, stopped her. She crouched low, trying to stay hidden behind a bush, and watched. After a few moments, she realized what was wrong. One of its front claws was caught between jagged rocks, and there was blood pooling around it. Even worse, a piece of twisted metal, a nail, perhaps from a fence, was embedded deep into the claw itself. The dragon shifted uncomfortably, letting out another groan of pain. Her mind raced. Should she help? Could she even do anything? The creature was easily 10 times. Her size and its very presence screamed danger. Yet as she stared at it, she couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't going to hurt her. There was an intelligence in its eyes, a spark of awareness that made her think it understood her presence. Taking a deep breath, Lila decided to take a chance. She stepped out from behind the bush, holding her hands up to show she meant no harm. "Hey, Her voice trembled, barely above a whisper. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon stopped moving and turned its head to look at her. For a moment, Lila thought she'd made a terrible mistake. Then slowly the creature lowered its gaze, almost as if it were waiting for her to act. Encouraged, Lila approached cautiously, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. When she was close enough to touch the dragon, she paused, taking in the details of its injuries. The claw was swollen and raw, and the nail jutting out of it looked rusty and jagged. If left untreated, the wound could become infected. Or worse. "I need to get that out," Lila muttered to herself, more to steady her nerves than anything else. She pulled her pocket knife from her backpack and knelt beside the dragon's massive paw. Up close, the creature smelled like burnt metal and earth, an odd combination that made her nose wrinkle. Still, she focused on the task at hand. Carefully, she positioned the blade against the base of the nail and applied pressure. The dragon tensified slightly, its muscles tightening under her hands, but it didn't lash out. With a final push, the nail came free. Blood welled up from the wound, but Lila quickly pressed a clean cloth she'd brought along against it to stop the bleeding. There, she said softly, stepping back. That should help. For a long moment, the dragon simply stared at her. Then, to her surprise, it let out a low rumble. Not a growl this time, but something softer, almost like a purr. Lila blinked, unsure how to interpret the sound. Was it gratitude? Relief? She didn't know, but she felt a strange sense of accomplishment, as if she'd done something important. Before she could process what had just happened, the dragon shifted again, pulling its injured claw free from the rocks. It stretched its wings experimentally, wincing slightly but otherwise appearing stronger than before. Lila watched in awe as the creature stood fully upright, towering over her. For a brief second, she wondered if she'd made a grave error trusting it. But instead of attacking, the dragon lowered its head until it was level with hers. Its glowing eyes locked onto hers, and suddenly, Lila felt a strange sensation. A warmth spreading through her mind, as if someone were speaking directly to her thoughts. "Thank you," a voice echoed in her head, deep and resonant. "You have shown kindness where others would have fled." Lila gasped, stumbling backward. "What?" she stammered. What are you?" "I am Kale," the voice replied calmly. "A traveler far from home. I owe you my life, human." Kale's words sent shivers down Lila's spine. This wasn't just some wild animal, it was intelligent, possibly even more so than her. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could say anything, Kale spread his wings and let out a mighty roar. The sound reverberated through the forest, sending birds scattering from the trees. Then, with a powerful leap, he took to the sky, disappearing into the night. Lila stood there for a long time, staring at the spot where Kale had been. Her hands still smelled of blood and metal, and her heart was racing. She had no idea what had just happened, but one thing was certain. Her quiet, predictable life was about to change forever. The next morning, Lila sat in her dorm room, staring blankly at the notes spread across her desk. Her mind kept wandering back to the events of the previous night. Kyle, the dragon-like creature, and the strange voice that had spoken inside her head. She couldn't shake the feeling that it had all been real, even though it sounded like something out of a fantasy novel. The small cut on her palm from handling the pocket knife served as proof that she hadn't imagined everything. Her roommate Mia walked into the room carrying a tray of coffee and bagels. "You look exhausted," Mia said, setting the tray down. "Did you stay up studying again?" Lila hesitated. Should she tell Mia what happened? No, it was too unbelievable. Even she barely believed it herself. "Yeah, I guess I lost track of time," she replied, forcing a smile. "Thanks for the coffee." Mia shrugged and grabbed a bagel before heading out. Once she was gone, Lila pulled out the cloth she'd used to stop Kyle's bleeding. It was still stained with his blood, dark and shimmering faintly under the light. She stared at it, wondering if there was anything special about it, or if she was just overthinking things. That evening, unable to focus on her studies, Lila decided to return to the clearing where she'd met Kyle. She didn't know why she felt drawn to the place, but something told her she needed to go back. As she approached the spot, she noticed scorch marks on the ground and broken branches scattered around. It looked like a struggle had taken place here, but there was no sign of Kale. Disappointed, Lila turned to leave when she heard a rustling sound behind her. She spun around, her heart racing, only to see Kale stepping out from the shadows. His scales gleamed dimly in the fading sunlight, and he moved cautiously as if testing her reaction. Lila let out a shaky breath. "You're okay," she said softly. Kyle lowered his massive head until it was level with hers. "I am healing," he replied, his voice echoing in her mind once more. "Your actions saved me from further harm." Lila nodded, unsure of what else to say. Kale studied her for a moment before continuing. "You are different from others of your kind. Most humans would have run or attacked without thought. Yet you chose to help." I don't know why," Lila admitted. "I just saw you were hurt and thought maybe I could do something." Kale's glowing eyes softened. Kindness is rare among species, especially those unfamiliar with each other. You possess a quality few do. A willingness to act despite fear. His words made Lila feel both proud and uneasy. She wasn't used to being praised, let alone by an alien creature. "What are you doing here?" she asked after a moment. "Why did you crash land?" Kale hesitated as if deciding how much to reveal. Finally he spoke. "My people, the Zindari, are refugees fleeing a war. We seek new worlds to call home, but our journey has not been peaceful. My ship was damaged during an attack by the Vorthak, our enemies. I landed here to repair it, but my injuries delayed me." Lila frowned. "The Vorthak? Are they dangerous?" "They are relentless," Kyle replied gravely. "If they find me, they will destroy me, and anyone who helps me." Chill ran down Lila's spine. She had read enough science fiction to understand the stakes. Helping Kyle meant putting herself in danger, but looking into his luminous eyes, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. "How can I help?" she asked quietly. Kyle tilted his head, surprised by her offer. "You would risk yourself for someone you barely know? You trusted me enough to talk to me," Lila said. "I think that counts for something." For a long moment, Kale didn't respond. Then he stepped aside, revealing a sleek, metallic object partially hidden beneath some bushes. It looked like a spaceship, though smaller than what Lila had imagined. Parts of it were dented and scorched, wires hanging loose like tangled vines. "This is my vessel," Kyle explained. "It requires repairs beyond my current ability. Your tools and knowledge may assist me." Lila stared at the ship, overwhelmed but intrigued. She didn't know much about spaceships, but she was good with machines and puzzles. Maybe she could figure it out. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll try." Over the next several days, Lila threw herself into helping Kale. She borrowed tools from the campus workshop, claiming she was working on a robotics project. During the nights, she snuck out to the clearing, using her flashlight to examine the ship's damaged components. Kale taught her about its systems, explaining how energy flowed through circuits and conduits. Though the technology was far beyond anything she'd ever seen, Lila found it fascinating. Each discovery felt like solving a complex equation, and Kale seemed impressed by her quick learning. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Kale shared stories about the Zindari, their culture, their history, and their struggles. In turn, Lila told him about Earth, describing its beauty and flaws. She showed him pictures of cities, oceans, and mountains on her phone, marveling at how curious he seemed about such ordinary things. For the first time in her life, Lila felt truly understood, as if she'd found a friend who accepted her for who she was. But their progress wasn't without challenges. The ship's damage was extensive, and some parts required materials Lila couldn't easily obtain. She spent hours searching junkyards and online stores, piecing together makeshift solutions. There were moments when frustration threatened to overwhelm her, but Kale's encouragement kept her going. "Patience is key," he would remind her. "Even the smallest effort brings us closer to success." One night, as they worked side by side, Lila paused to wipe sweat from her forehead. "Do you miss your people?" she asked suddenly. Kale stilled, his expression unreadable. "Every day," he admitted, "but I carry their hopes with me. Returning to them means ensuring their survival." Lila nodded, understanding the weight of his responsibility. "Do you think they'll come looking for you?" "It is unlikely," Kyle said. "Communication is difficult across such vast distances. But I must succeed, for their sake." Hearing his determination inspired Lila to push harder. She knew the risks involved, yet she couldn't abandon him. Not now. As the days passed, she began to feel a sense of purpose she'd never experienced before. Helping Kale wasn't just about fixing a spaceship, it was about making a difference, however small, in a universe far larger than she'd ever imagined. By the end of the week, they had made significant progress. The ship's exterior looked less battered, and many of its internal systems were functioning again. Kyle tested the engines one evening, producing a low hum that vibrated through the ground. Lila grinned, feeling a surge of pride. They were close, so close to completing their mission. But as they celebrated their progress, Cale grew increasingly tense. He often scanned the skies, his ears twitching at every distant sound. One night, as they prepared to leave the clearing, he stopped abruptly. "We are not alone," he said, his voice tight with urgency. Lila froze, her stomach dropping. "What do you mean?" "The Vorthak," Cale replied. "They are near." Lila's heart pounded as she followed Cale's gaze toward the darkening sky. The forest was quiet, too quiet, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She had always thought danger was something that happened in movies or books, not in real life. But now, standing next to a dragon-like alien who could sense threats from miles away, she realized how wrong she'd been. "What do we do?" Lila whispered, clutching the flashlight in her hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Cale's glowing eyes narrowed as he scanned the horizon. "We must act quickly. If the Vorthak find us here, they will destroy everything, including you." The weight of his words hit Lila like a punch to the chest. She wasn't just helping Cale anymore. She was part of this fight, whether she wanted to be or not. "How much time do we have?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Not long," Cale replied. "They are skilled hunters. We need to finish repairing the ship tonight." Lila nodded, pushing aside her fear. She couldn't afford to freeze now. "Tell me what to do." Kyle wasted no time. He led her back to the clearing where the spaceship lay partially hidden beneath the bushes. Its metallic surface gleamed faintly under the moonlight, still scarred but looking more functional than it had days ago. "The final step is to recalibrate the energy core," Cale explained. "It is delicate work, but essential for the ship to function." Lila swallowed, hard. Delicate work sounded like the kind of thing that could go horribly wrong. "What happens if I mess it up?" "The consequences would be severe," Kyle admitted. "But I believe in your ability. You have proven yourself capable." His trust gave her a small boost of confidence, though her hands were still trembling. Cale handed her a small device that looked like a cross between a wrench and a computer tablet. "This tool will guide you. Follow its instructions carefully." Taking a deep breath, Lila knelt beside the open panel of the ship. The energy core pulsed with a soft blue light, humming faintly as if alive. She placed the tool against it, watching as a series of symbols appeared on the screen. They weren't in any language she recognized, but the device translated them into simple commands. Adjust frequency. Stabilize output. As Lila worked, Cale kept watch, his massive form tense and alert. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made him growl softly, his claws digging into the earth. Lila tried to block out the tension around her, focusing instead on the task at hand. Adjusting the frequency was trickier than she expected, requiring precise movements and constant monitoring of the readings. Sweat dripped down her face, but she didn't dare stop. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Just as Lila thought she was close to finishing, a sudden noise shattered the silence. A loud crackling sound followed by the unmistakable hum of engines. Her head snapped up, and she saw 3 sleek, black ships descending through the trees, their shapes jagged and menacing. "They're here," Kyle growled, stepping protectively in front of Lila. His wings spread wide, casting a shadow over the clearing. "Stay behind me." Lila's stomach churned with panic, but she forced herself to stay calm. Finishing the repairs was their only chance. "I'm almost done," she shouted over the growing roar of the approaching ships. "Just give me a minute." Kyle glanced back at her, his expression torn between worry and determination. "Hurry," he said simply. The Vorthak ships landed in a semicircle around the clearing, kicking up dirt and debris. Their doors slid open, revealing figures clad in dark armor. Unlike Cale's shimmering scales, these creatures were angular and mechanical, their bodies covered in sharp edges and glowing red eyes. They moved with eerie precision, surrounding Kale and Lila without hesitation. One of the Vorthak stepped forward, its voice cold and mechanical. "Zindari scum, surrender, and your death will be swift." Kale let out a deafening roar, his wings flaring as he prepared to fight. "You will not take me," he snarled. "Leave this place, or face my wrath." The Vorthak responded by raising weapons that crackled with energy. Lila crouched low, shielding herself behind the ship's frame. Her mind raced. She couldn't fight these things, but maybe she could distract them. Grabbing a flare gun from her backpack, a tool she'd brought for emergencies, she aimed it at the nearest tree and fired. The bright red light burst into the sky, drawing the attention of the Vorthak. "What is that human doing?" One of the armored figures demanded, turning toward Lila. "Eliminate her," another ordered, raising its weapon. Before they could fire, Kale lunged forward, swiping at them with his claws. Sparks flew as his attack connected with their armor, forcing them to retreat. The distraction gave Lila the precious seconds she needed. Returning to the energy core, she made the final adjustments, her fingers flying over the tool's interface. The blue light steadied, and the ship emitted a low, triumphant hum. "It's ready!" Lila yelled, scrambling to her feet. Kyle didn't hesitate. With a powerful leap, he grabbed Lila in one of his massive claws and hurled himself toward the ship. The Vorthak opened fire, bolts of energy zipping past them as they dove into the vessel. Kyle slammed the hatch shut just as a blast struck the side of the ship, shaking it violently. "Strap yourself in," Kyle commanded, his voice urgent. Lila scrambled into a seat near the control panel, strapping on a harness that seemed designed for someone much larger. The interior of the ship was compact but advanced, filled with glowing panels and strange symbols. Kale took his place at the helm, his claws deftly manipulating the controls. The engines roared to life, lifting the ship off the ground. Outside, the Vorthak ships gave chase, firing relentlessly. Lila clung to her seat as the ship rocked and shuddered under the barrage. "Can they catch us?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "They will try," Kale replied grimly. "But my people built this vessel to withstand such attacks." True to his word, the ship accelerated rapidly, weaving through the trees and gaining altitude. The Vorthak pursued, but their ships were slower, less agile. One by one they fell behind until only empty sky surrounded them. For a moment, Lila allowed herself to breathe. They had escaped, at least for now. But as the adrenaline faded, exhaustion set in and reality began to sink in. She had just fled Earth in an alien spaceship, leaving behind everything familiar. What would happen next? Kale seemed to sense her unease. "You have done well, Lila," he said, his tone softer now. "Your bravery saved us both." "I didn't really have a choice," Lila muttered, staring out the window at the stars streaking past. "But where are we going?" "To safety," Kale replied. "Somewhere the Vorthak cannot follow. For now, rest. You've earned it." Lila nodded, leaning back in her seat. Despite the uncertainty ahead, she felt a strange sense of pride. She had faced danger, helped repair an alien spacecraft, and survived an encounter with hostile beings. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't the same person who had wandered into the woods just days ago. The spaceship hummed softly as it soared through the vast emptiness of space. Lila sat in her seat, staring out the window at the endless expanse of stars. It was breathtaking, yet terrifying. For the first time in her life, she truly understood how small Earth was compared to the universe around it. She felt both awe and fear, awe at the beauty of the cosmos and fear of the unknown dangers that might still be waiting for them. Kale had taken the controls, his massive form hunched over the glowing panels. His claws moved with surprising delicacy, adjusting settings and monitoring readings. Despite his size, he handled the ship with a precision that reassured Lila. He glanced at her occasionally, his glowing eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked finally, breaking the silence. Lila hesitated before answering. I think so," she said slowly. "It's just, everything is happening so fast. I don't even know what comes next." Kale nodded as if he understood exactly how she felt. You are brave to have come this far. Few humans would face such challenges without faltering. I didn't really have a choice, Lila replied, though her voice lacked conviction. Deep down, she knew she could have walked away at any point. But something inside her, a mix of curiosity, compassion, and stubbornness, had kept her going. Now she wondered if that decision would lead to more trouble than she'd bargained for. For a while they traveled in silence, the only sounds coming from the soft hum of the engines and the occasional beep of the control panel. Lila's mind raced with questions. Where were they headed? What did Kale plan to do once they reached their destination? And most importantly, what would happen to her? As if reading her thoughts, Kale spoke again. We are heading to a safe zone, a place hidden from the Vorthak. There I can recover fully and prepare for my journey home. And me? Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What happens to me? Kyle paused, his expression thoughtful. That depends on you. You may return to Earth once we reach safety. Or, he trailed off, his glowing eyes meeting hers. You may choose to stay and learn more about my people and the universe beyond your world. Lila's heart skipped a beat. The idea of returning to her quiet, predictable life suddenly felt suffocating. But staying with Kale meant stepping into a world she barely understood, a world full of danger and wonder. Could she handle it? Before she could respond, the ship shuddered violently, throwing her against her harness. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the control panel. What's happening? Lila shouted, gripping the sides of her seat. The Vorthak, Kale growled, his tone grim. They found us. Lila's stomach dropped. She turned to the window and saw 3 black ships closing in fast, their jagged shapes cutting through the darkness like knives. Energy blasts streaked past them, narrowly missing the hull. Kale's wings flared as he leaned forward, his claws flying over the controls. Hold on, he warned. The ship banked sharply, spinning and twisting to evade the attacks. Lila clenched, her teeth, her body pressed hard against the seat. She had never felt anything like this. Not even the wildest roller coasters came close. Her knuckles turned white as she gripped the armrests, praying they wouldn't get hit. Kale worked furiously, his movements quick and precise. Their weapons are stronger than expected, he muttered, almost to himself. If we don't act, soon they'll overwhelm us. What can I do? Lila asked, desperate to help. Kyle glanced at her, his glowing eyes calculating. There is one option, but it is dangerous. Tell me, Lila insisted. I'll do whatever it takes. Kale hesitated, then gestured toward a small compartment near the control panel. Inside is a crystalline artifact. It contains energy capable of disabling their weapons temporarily, but activating it requires physical contact, and it will drain some of your strength. Lila's heart raced. She didn't fully understand what he was asking, but she trusted him. Give it to me. Kyle opened the compartment and pulled out a small, glowing shard. Its surface shimmered with colors that seemed to shift and dance, mesmerizing her. He handed it to her carefully. Place it against the core when I give the signal. Focus on channeling your energy into it. Lila nodded, holding the shard tightly. Her palms tingled as she touched it, as if it were alive. Outside, the Vorthak ships closed in, their weapons charging for another barrage. Kyle maneuvered the ship skillfully, dodging blast after blast, but it was clear they couldn't keep this up forever. Now! Kale shouted. Without hesitation, Lila pressed the shard against the energy core. A surge of warmth spread through her body, followed by an intense burning sensation. She gasped, feeling as though her very essence was being pulled into the shard. Colors danced before her eyes, and for a moment she thought she might pass out. But then something incredible happened. A brilliant beam of light shot out from the ship, enveloping the Vorthak vessels in a blinding glow. Their weapons sputtered and died, and their ships wobbled, struggling to maintain control. One by one, they veered off course, disappearing into the void. Lila slumped back in her seat, exhausted but triumphant. Her hands trembled, and her head felt heavy, but she managed a weak smile. Did it work? Kyle let out a low rumble, his, version of a sigh of relief. Yes, you did it, Lila. Their systems are disabled for now. The ship stabilized and the alarms fell silent. Lila closed her eyes, letting the adrenaline fade. She had done it. She had helped Kale fight off the Vorthak, using a power she didn't even know she possessed. But the cost was clear. Her body ached and her mind felt foggy, as if part of her energy had been drained. Kale turned to her, his expression softening. You risked much to save us. I am in your debt. Lila shook her head, too tired to argue. Just tell me we're safe for now. For now, Kale confirmed. But we must remain vigilant. The Vorthak will not give up easily. As the ship continued its journey, Lila allowed herself to rest. Her thoughts drifted back to Earth. The familiar streets, her books, her quiet little life. She wondered if she would ever see them again. But deep down, she knew she had already changed. The girl who had wandered into the woods days ago no longer existed. In her place was someone stronger, braver, and ready to face whatever lay ahead. When she woke hours later, the ship was calm and steady. Kale stood nearby, watching her with a mixture of gratitude and concern. How do you feel? He asked gently. Better, Lila replied, stretching her arms. Still a little shaky, but okay. Kale nodded. The artifact took a toll on you, but your strength will return. You have proven yourself capable of great things. Lila smiled faintly, though her mind was still processing everything that had happened. So, where are we going now? To the safe zone, Kyle answered. A place where we can regroup and plan our next move, and where you can decide your path. Lila looked out the window at the stars streaming past. Her future was uncertain, but for the first time she felt excited about it. Whatever came next, she knew she wouldn't face it alone. The safe zone was nothing like Lila had imagined. When Kale had first mentioned it, she pictured a hidden planet or a secret space station filled with advanced technology and bustling alien activity. Instead, what greeted them was a small, desolate moon orbiting a distant gas giant. Its surface was rocky and barren, dotted with craters and streaks of gray dust. The only sign of life or anything unusual was a faint shimmer in the air, like heat waves rising from asphalt on a summer day. Kale guided the ship toward the shimmer, explaining as they approached. This is a cloaked sanctuary, he said. It is invisible to outsiders, protected by energy fields that mask its presence. Lila nodded, though she didn't fully understand. She trusted Kale's knowledge, but the idea of an entire moon being hidden from view felt surreal. As they passed through the shimmer, the landscape changed dramatically. What had seemed lifeless moments ago now revealed signs of habitation, smooth metallic structures blending seamlessly with the terrain, glowing pathways winding between them and tall spires reaching toward the sky. This is incredible, Lila whispered, pressing her face against the window. How did you find this place? It has been used by my people for generations, Kyle replied. A refuge during times of war. Few know of its existence. The ship landed gently in a designated area near one of the larger structures. As the hatch opened, Lila stepped out cautiously, her boots crunching against the fine layer of dust covering the ground. The air smelled clean, almost sterile, and the temperature was cool but comfortable. She turned in a circle, taking in the strange yet beautiful surroundings. Kyle joined her, his massive form casting a long shadow under the dim light of the distant sun. Come, he said. There is much to discuss. They walked along one of the glowing pathways, their footsteps echoing softly. Lila noticed movement in the distance. Other figures, humanoid but clearly not human, moving about their tasks. Some glanced at her curiously, their eyes lingering before returning to their work. She felt self-conscious, aware that she was an outsider in this place. Inside the structure, they entered a large chamber filled with holographic displays and intricate machinery. Kyle led her to a circular platform in the center of the room. This will allow us to assess your condition, he explained. The artifact drained some of your energy. We need to ensure you recover fully. Lila hesitated but stepped onto the platform. Instantly, beams of light scanned her body, creating a three-dimensional image above her head. Lines of text scrolled across the hologram, written in symbols she couldn't read. Kyle studied them carefully, his expression unreadable. "You are stronger than I expected," he said finally. "Your body adapted quickly to the artifact's demands. Still, you will need rest." Relieved, Lila nodded. "Thank you. For everything. For saving me. For trusting me." Kale tilted his head, his glowing eyes softening. "You saved me as well. Without your courage, I would not have survived." For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of their shared experiences hanging between them. Then Kale spoke again. "There is something else I must tell you. Something important." Lila's stomach tightened. His tone was serious, almost hesitant. "What is it?" Kale gestured toward the holographic displays. "The artifact you used, it left traces within you. Traces of its power." "Traces?" Lila repeated, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means the artifact has marked you," Kyle explained. "Its energy has bonded with yours, granting you abilities beyond those of ordinary humans." Lila's heart raced. Abilities? She thought back to the warmth she'd felt when holding the shard, the surge of power that had disabled the Vorthak ships. Could it be true? "What kind of abilities?" "I cannot say for certain," Kale admitted. "Each individual reacts differently, but you may find yourself capable of feats you once believed impossible." The news was overwhelming. Lila had always been ordinary, a quiet girl who preferred books over adventure. Now she was being told she had powers. It sounded like something out of a comic book. Yet deep down, she knew Kale wouldn't lie to her. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "That depends on you," Kale replied. "You can remain here, learn to control these abilities, and explore the universe alongside me. Or you can return to Earth, to your old life. The choice is yours." Lila stared at him, her mind racing. Returning to Earth meant safety, familiarity, and the chance to forget all of this ever happened. But staying meant embracing the unknown, facing challenges, learning new things, and discovering who she truly was. The decision wasn't easy, but as she looked into Kale's glowing eyes, she realized she already knew her answer. "I want to stay," she said firmly. "At least for now." Kale nodded, a hint of pride in his expression. "Then we will begin your training." Over the next few days, Lila immersed herself in learning about her newfound abilities. Kale introduced her to others in the sanctuary, members of his species and allies from other races who helped guide her. They taught her how to focus her energy, channeling it into simple tasks like lighting objects or creating protective barriers. At first, it was frustrating. The power felt erratic, difficult to control. But slowly, she began to understand how it worked, how it responded to her thoughts and emotions. One evening, as she practiced in a secluded corner of the sanctuary, Kale joined her. "You are making progress," he said, watching as she created a small orb of light in her palm. "It's harder than it looks," Lila admitted, smiling weakly. "But I'm getting better." Kale nodded. "Control takes time. You must be patient." As they talked, Lila noticed something odd, a flicker of unease in Kale's demeanor. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Kale hesitated before answering. "The Vorthak are persistent. Even here we are not entirely safe. My people believe they may attempt to locate this sanctuary." Fear gripped Lila's chest. "What happens if they find us?" "We will defend it," Kyle said firmly. "But we must prepare for the worst." The gravity of his words settled over her. Their journey wasn't over. Not even close. Danger still loomed, and she knew she couldn't run from it forever. Yet instead of feeling overwhelmed, She felt a spark of determination. She had come too far to give up now. "Then let's get ready," she said, standing taller. "Whatever comes next, I'll face it, with you." Kyle's glowing eyes softened, and for the first time, Lila saw something akin to gratitude in them. "You are remarkable," he said quietly. "I am honored to call you my ally." Together they returned to the main chamber, where preparations were already underway. Engineers worked tirelessly to reinforce the sanctuary's defenses while others coordinated strategies for potential attacks. Lila joined in, using her growing abilities to assist wherever she could. Each task brought her closer to understanding her role in this vast universe, and to realizing that she was no longer just a nerdy girl from Earth. She was part of something greater. As the days passed, Lila grew more confident in her powers and her place among Kale's people. She trained hard, pushed herself to her limits, and discovered strengths she never knew she possessed. And though the threat of the Vorthak lingered, she faced it with courage, knowing she wasn't alone. When the alarm finally sounded, one piercing note that echoed through the sanctuary, Lila didn't panic. She stood beside Kale, ready to fight. Whatever happened next, she knew she was prepared. The alarm blared through the sanctuary, sharp and urgent. Lila's heart raced as she followed Kale to the main control room. The once calm atmosphere was now filled with tension. Engineers rushed around, adjusting panels and monitoring screens. Holographic maps showed red dots converging on their location. The Vorthak were closing in. Kale stood tall, his glowing eyes scanning the displays. "They have found us," he said grimly. "Their ships are entering the moon's orbit." Lila clenched her fists, her mind racing. She had known this moment might come, but now that it was here, fear threatened to overwhelm her. Still, she pushed it aside. She wasn't the same person who had wandered into the woods days ago. She had faced danger before, and she would face it again with Kale by her side. "What's the plan?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We hold our ground," Kale replied. "Our defenses are strong, but we cannot rely on them alone. We must fight." Lila nodded. "Tell me what to do." Kale turned to her, his expression serious. "You've trained well, Lila. Use your abilities to protect those who cannot defend themselves. Focus on creating barriers and disabling enemy weapons. Trust yourself. You are stronger than you know." With that, Kale gave orders to the others, dividing them into teams to secure different parts of the sanctuary. Lila joined a group stationed near the outer perimeter, where the first wave of attacks was expected. Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared herself, remembering the lessons she'd learned over the past few days. She closed her eyes, focusing on the energy within her, feeling it pulse like a second heartbeat. When the Vorthak arrived, they came with brutal force. Their ships descended like dark storms, unleashing waves of energy blasts that shattered the protective field surrounding the sanctuary. Explosions rocked the ground, sending debris flying in all directions. Lila ducked, behind a barrier, her ears ringing from the noise. For a moment, panic gripped her, but then she remembered Kale's words. "Trust yourself." Summoning her strength, Lila raised her hands, channeling her energy into a shimmering shield that blocked an incoming blast. The impact sent a jolt through her arms, but the barrier held firm. Encouraged, she pushed harder, expanding the shield to cover several allies nearby. They looked at her in awe, gratitude shining in their eyes. "Keep going," one of them shouted, firing back at the attackers. Lila didn't stop. She moved along the line, reinforcing shields and disabling enemy drones with bursts of energy. Each action drained her, but adrenaline kept her going. She could feel the strain building inside her muscles aching and her head throbbing, but she refused to give up. This was her fight now, her home. As the battle raged on, Kyle took to the skies, his massive form soaring above the battlefield. His wings glowed with fiery light as he unleashed powerful attacks, scattering the Vorthak forces. Lila watched him with admiration, drawing strength from his determination. Together they fought like a team, each covering the other's weaknesses. But the Vorthak were relentless. Wave after wave of reinforcements poured in, overwhelming the defenders. Just when it seemed the sanctuary might fall, a sudden roar echoed across the battlefield. A fleet of Zindari ships appeared on the horizon, their sleek forms gleaming as they engaged the enemy. Relief washed over Lila as she realized help had arrived. The tide of the battle shifted quickly, with the Zindari reinforcements driving back. The Vorthak, the defenders, regrouped and pushed forward. Lila continued to support her allies, her powers growing stronger with each use. By the time the Vorthak retreated, leaving behind smoldering wreckage and damaged ships, the sanctuary was battered but intact. Exhausted, Lila collapsed onto the ground, her body trembling from the effort. Kale landed beside her, his scales scratched and scorched but otherwise unharmed. He lowered his head until it was level with hers. "You fought bravely," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Today you proved yourself a true warrior." Lila managed a weak smile. "I couldn't have done it without you, or everyone else." Kale nodded. "This victory belongs to all of us. But the war is far from over. The Vorthak will return, and we must remain vigilant." Over the next few days, the sanctuary began to recover. Repairs were made, defenses strengthened, and plans drawn for future battles. Lila spent much of her time training further, honing her abilities under the guidance of Kale and other mentors. She discovered new aspects of her powers, how to sense danger, how to heal minor wounds, and even how to communicate telepathically over short distances. One evening, as she sat with Kale overlooking the desolate landscape, she voiced a question that had been on her mind. "What happens to me now? Will I ever go back to Earth?" Kyle was silent for a moment before answering. "That choice remains yours. You have earned the right to decide your path. But know this: if you choose to stay, you will always have a place among my people." Lila thought about it carefully. Returning to Earth meant leaving behind everything she had experienced, the friendships, the challenges, the growth. It meant going back to a life that suddenly felt too small. Staying meant embracing uncertainty, facing dangers she could barely comprehend, and stepping into a role she never imagined for herself. Yet the idea of staying filled her with excitement rather than fear. "I want to stay," she said finally, her voice firm. "At least for now. There's so much more I want to learn and so much I can do to help." Kale's glowing eyes softened. "Then welcome, Lila Parker, to a new chapter of your journey." Months passed, and Lila grew into her role as a protector of the sanctuary. She became a symbol of hope, not just for the Zindari but for all who sought refuge there. Her powers continued to develop, surprising even her mentors. She learned to fly using energy constructs, to manipulate matter, and to sense the emotions of those around her. With each new skill, she felt more connected to the universe and its endless possibilities. But the Vorthak remained a constant threat. Though they hadn't returned to the sanctuary, reports of their movements reached them regularly. Lila knew the fight wasn't over, but she also knew she was ready. She had faced her fears, embraced her strengths, and found a purpose greater than herself. One night, as she stood beneath the stars, Lila reflected on how far she had come. From a shy, introverted girl obsessed with books and telescopes, she had become someone capable of standing against interstellar threats. She smiled faintly, thinking of the irony. All it had taken was removing a nail from an alien dragon's claw. Behind her, Kale approached, his massive form casting a long shadow. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently. "Just how strange life is," Lila replied. "How one small act can change everything." Kale nodded. "Kindness often does, and bravery. You have shown both in abundance." Lila looked up at him, gratitude filling her heart. "Thank you for believing in me." "You have earned that belief," Kyle said simply. "Now rest. Tomorrow brings new challenges." As Lila walked back to her quarters, she felt a sense of peace. Her future was uncertain, but she no longer feared it. Whatever lay ahead, she knew she wouldn't face it alone. She had friends, allies, and a purpose. And most importantly, she had herself, a version of herself she was proud to be.